Admiral Zektar Molvan had conquered 18 worlds in his 4-century career. Each one had followed the same predictable pattern established by the Eternal Dominion's military doctrine: overwhelming show of force, demonstration of technological superiority, formal demand for surrender, and then either immediate submission or a brief futile resistance before inevitable capitulation. So when his massive dreadnought, the subjugator of Defiance, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, he expected this Earth conquest to be routine. His ship alone was 3 kilometers long, armed with planet crackers and protected by energy shields that could withstand the explosion of small stars. The intelligence reports had been clear. The humans had barely achieved spaceflight, still used chemical propulsion, and had no energy weapons to speak of. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Vexan, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the third planet. They appear to be broadcasting in over 200 different languages simultaneously." Zektar's eye stalks twitched in mild confusion. "Are they attempting some form of confusion tactic?" "No, sir. They appear to be news broadcasts, entertainment programs, and..." Vexan paused, consulting his translator. "Something called social media updates, about a creature named Keyboard Cat." "I see. Zektar had encountered strange alien customs before. Open a communication channel." Standard first contact protocol. The view screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a primitive communication center. A human female with short brown hair and wearing a simple blue uniform stood before various monitoring equipment. Behind her, Zektar could see other humans rushing around frantically, but not in the organized panic he was accustomed to seeing. They seemed almost excited. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet." Zektar began in his most imposing voice, his translation matrix rendering his words into human English. "I am Admiral Zektar Molvan of the Eternal Dominion. You will surrender your world immediately or face..." "Oh my God!" The human woman interrupted, her face breaking into a wide grin. "You're actually aliens. This is incredible. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Director of SETI. We've been hoping for this moment for decades." Zektar paused. In his 3 centuries of first contacts, no one had ever interrupted him. "You have been hoping for conquest?" "What?" "No, not conquest. Contact, communication." "We have so many questions. What's your homeworld like? How does your faster-than-light travel work? Are there other species out there? Is that a real battleship? It's amazing!" Behind Dr. Chen, the Admiral could see humans pointing at screens, taking pictures, and one individual who appeared to be speaking rapidly into a small device while pointing at the view screen. The translation matrix identified phrases like "going viral," "contact the president," and "someone wake up Neil deGrasse Tyson." "Aye, yes, it is a real battleship," Zektar found himself saying. "The subjugator of Defiance. It is equipped with quantum disruptors and..." "Quantum disruptors? Fascinating. Do they work by manipulating subatomic particles?" "We've got some theoretical physicists here who would love to discuss the principles. Are you familiar with our work on the Standard Model?" Vexan leaned over to whisper. "Sir, should we proceed with the intimidation display?" Zektar waved him off, finding himself oddly intrigued despite his confusion. "Your Standard Model?" For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Chen enthusiastically explained human physics, occasionally calling over various scientists who happened to be in the facility. The Admiral found himself learning about particle accelerators, quantum mechanics, and something called the God particle. None of it was particularly advanced by Dominion standards, but the humans' enthusiasm was infectious. "This is all very interesting," Zektar finally managed to interject, "but I am here to demand your planet's surrender to the Eternal Dominion." Dr. Chen's expression shifted to one of polite confusion. "Oh, well, I appreciate the offer, but I'm really just a scientist. You'd need to talk to the governments about that sort of thing. But honestly, I think you might want to reconsider the whole conquest approach." "Reconsider?" Zektar's voice carried the full weight of his authority. "I command the most powerful warship in this sector. Your planet has no defenses that could even scratch our hull." "Oh, I'm sure you're absolutely right about that, Dr. Rhett," Chen said cheerfully. "But have you actually researched human history? Because the thing about humans is we're really, really bad at staying conquered. We have this weird habit of making occupation way more trouble than it's worth." "Impossible. The Dominion's occupation protocols are flawless. They have been refined over 12 millennia. "Well, I'm sure they work great on sensible species," Dr. Chen replied. "But we're not particularly sensible. For instance, We once had a war that started because someone threw a defenestrated archduke. We've had multiple conflicts over which end of an egg to crack open, and just last century we managed to have 2 global wars, primarily because we couldn't agree on basic human rights. Vexan pulled up the relevant historical data. Sir, she's not exaggerating. They appear to have spent most of their recorded history in conflict with themselves. Currently, Dr. Chen continued, we have 195 separate governmental entities, approximately 7,000 distinct languages, and roughly 42 major religious groups, most of whom have multiple denominations that disagree with each other on fundamental principles. That's highly inefficient, Zektar observed. Oh, absolutely. We're terrible at efficiency. But we're excellent at making other people's lives complicated. For example, right now, while we've been talking, this conversation has been broadcast to about 43 different news networks, uploaded to 17 social media platforms, and probably turned into at least 12 different memes. Memes? Shared cultural jokes. Like, someone's probably already captioned a picture of your ship with "Came for conquest, stayed for physics lecture." It'll be on t-shirts by tomorrow. Zektar looked at Vexan, who was rapidly checking human communication networks. Sir, she's correct. The interaction is being discussed by approximately 4 billion humans in real time. Also, someone has created what appears to be a romantic fan fiction story starring you and something called Captain Kirk. I don't understand this species, Zektar muttered. That's kind of our thing, Dr. Chen said brightly. We don't understand ourselves most of the time. But here's a serious suggestion. Instead of conquest, have you considered trade and cultural exchange? Because honestly, if your goal is to benefit from Earth's resources and knowledge, you'll get a lot more cooperation if you approach us as partners rather than conquerors. The Eternal Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species.
Okay, but here's the thing about calling us primitive to our faces. It's not really great for starting a positive relationship.
Also, and I'm just throwing this out there, but if we're so primitive, why are we the ones suggesting a more sophisticated approach to interstellar relations? Admiral Zektar found himself without an immediate response to that observation. In the background, his communications officer was frantically monitoring human networks. Admiral, the communications officer reported, the humans appear to have weaponized their social media against us. They're creating something called alien invasion memes, and there's a coordinated effort to rickroll our communication systems. What is rickrolling? It appears to be a form of cultural warfare involving a 1987 popular music video, sir. Dr. Chen tried to suppress a laugh. Oh, they wouldn't. That's exactly what they would do. Look, Admiral Zektar, I'm sure you're a very accomplished military leader, and your ship is genuinely impressive. But I think you're approaching this situation with some assumptions about humans that might not be accurate. What assumptions? Well, for starters, the assumption that we'll respond to superior firepower with logical surrender. Humans don't really do logical surrender. We tend to do spike-based resistance instead. As if to illustrate her point, Zektar's tactical display began showing multiple launches from the planet's surface. Not weapons, but what appeared to be thousands of small spacecraft and communication satellites. What are they launching? He demanded. Oh, those are probably observation satellites, communication relays, and emergency broadcasts, Chen explained. When humans think we might be conquered, our first instinct isn't to hide or surrender, it's to make sure everyone knows what's happening and starts figuring out how to make the conquerors' lives difficult. Those vessels pose no threat to us. Of course not, but they're not supposed to. They're supposed to ensure that whatever happens here gets witnessed by the entire planet, recorded for posterity, and probably turned into a documentary series. Humans have this weird relationship with authority figures. The more you tell us we can't do something, the more determined we become to do exactly that thing. Zektar was beginning to understand why his intelligence briefings had noted unusual patterns in human behavior. You're saying your species is naturally rebellious? I'm saying we're naturally curious, naturally stubborn, and naturally inclined to ask, but what if we tried it anyway, in response to being told something is impossible? We're also naturally inclined to help each other out when facing a common threat, which means that trying to conquer us is likely to be the first thing that gets our entire species to actually work together. The intelligence reports indicate humans are constantly in conflict with each other. Oh, we absolutely are. Right up until someone from outside tries to tell us what to do. Then we suddenly remember we're all human, and the real problem is the outsider giving us orders. Vexan was monitoring global communications. Sir, she appears to be correct. We're seeing unprecedented international cooperation developing in response to our presence. Multiple governments are coordinating response strategies. Also, Dr. Chen added, I should probably mention that about 40 minutes ago, someone leaked our entire conversation to the internet, and currently about 50,000 people are live streaming their own reactions to meeting aliens. Oh, and the Chinese have apparently launched 3 observation satellites in the time we've been talking. The Chinese? One of our larger political entities. They're very efficient when they want to be. So are the Americans, Europeans, Indians, and Russians. Independently, we're pretty chaotic. But when we focus on something collectively, we can be surprisingly effective. Admiral Zektar realized he was dealing with something unprecedented in his career, a species that seemed to treat potential conquest as an interesting social event rather than an existential threat. Moreover, they appeared to be responding to his demonstration of superior force by becoming more cooperative with each other rather than more compliant with him. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should arrange a more formal meeting to discuss the terms of your surrender.
I think that's a great idea,
Dr. Chen agreed. But maybe we could arrange a more formal meeting to discuss the terms of mutually beneficial contact instead. I mean, you came all this way. Wouldn't it be more interesting to learn about us than to just take our stuff and leave? As Admiral Zektar considered this unprecedented suggestion, he noticed his communications officer making frantic gestures. What is it? Sir, the humans have somehow hacked our translator matrix and replaced all instances of eternal dominion with Galactic Empire with obvious insecurity issues. Doctor. Chen covered her mouth, clearly trying not to laugh. I should probably apologize for that. Humans have this unfortunate habit of hacking things just to see if we can. It's not personal. Admiral Zektar looked at his crew, then at the cheerfully apologetic human scientist, then at the tactical display showing thousands of small human vessels launching apparently just to get a better look at his ship. For the first time in his career, he was beginning to suspect that conquering this particular planet might be more complicated than anticipated. 3 days after first contact, Admiral Zektar found himself in the most unusual situation of his military career. Sitting in what humans called a conference room aboard the International Space Station, surrounded by the strangest collection of diplomats he had ever encountered. The humans had suggested meeting on neutral ground, which apparently meant a small orbital facility that required everyone to float in zero gravity. Zektar had agreed, thinking it would demonstrate human technological limitations. Instead, he was discovering that humans had somehow turned weightlessness into a social advantage. Admiral, welcome. The lead human negotiator, Ambassador Maria Santos, pushed off from one wall and glided gracefully toward him, rotating mid-flight to orient herself properly. We're delighted you accepted our invitation. Zektar, struggling slightly with the unfamiliar environment, managed to stabilize himself near what appeared to be a conference table bolted to the floor. Around the room, representatives from various human governments floated with easy familiarity, some even appearing to enjoying the novelty of conducting diplomacy while upside down. This is highly irregular, Zektar observed. Dominion diplomatic protocols call for formal surrender ceremonies on solid ground. Well, that's part of what we wanted to discuss, said Dr. Bria. James Mitchell, the British representative, who was currently floating horizontally while reviewing documents on a tablet. We've been researching your Dominion's standard conquest procedures, and we have some thoughts. Thoughts? Ambassador Santos smiled. We humans have a lot of experience with empires, Admiral. We've built them, fought them, joined them, and outlasted them. And one thing we've learned is that the most successful long-term imperial relationships are actually partnerships. The Dominion does not form partnerships with primitive species, Zektar stated firmly. Right about that, interjected Dr. Barr. Yuki Tanaka, the Japanese representative, while gracefully rotating herself right side up. We've been analyzing your technology, and while it's certainly more advanced than ours, calling us primitive might be strategically unwise.
Explain. Dr.
Tanaka pulled out a small device. In the 3 days since first contact, human scientists have been studying your ship's energy signatures, analyzing your translation matrix, and reverse engineering principles from your communications arrays. We've already identified 17 potential improvements to our own technology. Impossible. Our security systems are impenetrable. Oh, we didn't hack your security. Dr. Chen, who had joined the meeting via video link from Earth, explained cheerfully. We just studied what you were broadcasting and worked backward from there. Humans are very good at figuring things out from incomplete information. Ambassador Santos continued the thought. The point is, Admiral, we may not have your level of technology, but we have something equally valuable: innovative thinking and rapid adaptation. In just 3 days, we've learned more about interstellar travel than we had in the previous 50 years. Furthermore, added Dr. Colin Mitchell, we've been reviewing historical records of your Dominion's previous conquests, and we've identified some patterns that might be problematic. Zektar's eye stalks focused sharply. What patterns? Well, every species you've conquered has eventually either gone extinct, been completely absorbed into Dominion culture, or acquired permanent military occupation, Ambassador Santos explained. That's not very sustainable, economically speaking. It's worked for 12,000 years. Has it, though? Dr. Tanaka asked, pulling up holographic displays. Because we've been analyzing the economic data you've shared about your empire, and it appears you're spending approximately 60% of your resources maintaining control over previously conquered territories. Zektar hadn't expected the humans to understand Dominion economics, let alone analyze them. Those resources are necessary for maintaining order. But that's just it, Dr. Chen said from the screen. You're not actually maintaining order, you're maintaining compliance through force. Order would be if these species wanted to participate in your empire. Ambassador Santos nodded. We humans have tried the rule through fear approach. The Romans did it, the Mongols did it, the British Empire did it, and they all discovered the same thing. Eventually, you run out of resources to keep everyone afraid, and then your empire collapses. The Eternal Dominion has lasted 12 millennia. The Roman Empire lasted over 1,000 years too, Dr. Mitchell observed. Right up until it didn't. Dr. Tanaka activated another display. We've been modeling the Dominion's expansion patterns, resource allocation, and administrative overhead. At your current rate of growth, you'll reach economic unsustainability within approximately 200 years. That analysis is based on incomplete data. Actually, it's based on principles of organizational management that humans have been developing for centuries, Ambassador Santos explained. We're really good at understanding how large, complex systems work. Mostly because we've had to manage incredibly complex, inefficient systems our entire history. Like what? Well, take the European Union. Doctor, Mitchell said. 27 different countries, each with their own languages, currencies, laws, and cultural preferences, somehow managing to work together economically and politically. It's messy, inefficient, and constantly requires negotiation, but it's been growing stronger for decades. Or the internet, Doctor, Chen added. A global communication network maintained by thousands of independent organizations with no central authority, somehow managing to connect billions of people in real time. It shouldn't work according to traditional organizational theory, but it does. Zektar was beginning to see where this conversation was heading. You're suggesting the Dominion should operate more like your chaotic human systems? We're suggesting that maybe there's a middle ground between chaotic and totalitarian, Ambassador Santos said diplomatically. What if, instead of conquering Earth, the Dominion formed an alliance with humanity?
An alliance? Think about it strategically,
Tanaka said. You get access to human creativity, innovation, and problem-solving abilities. We get access to advanced technology and knowledge of galactic civilization. Everyone benefits. And, Doctor, Mitchell added, you avoid the massive resource drain of trying to occupy a planet full of humans who really don't like being told what to do. We have superior firepower. Absolutely, Ambassador Santos agreed readily. But superior firepower is only useful if you're willing to use it. And if you're willing to destroy Earth to conquer it, then there's no point in conquering it. Moreover, Chen added, humans have this unfortunate habit of being more productive when we're happy and cooperative than when we're oppressed and resentful. Oppressed humans tend to spend their time figuring out how to escape or sabotage rather than contributing to society. Dr. Tanaka pulled up another display. We've been analyzing the productivity data from your conquered worlds. In every case, economic output declined significantly after conquest and never fully recovered because the species were inferior or because they were demoralized and resentful, Dr. Mitchell suggested. Humans have extensive experience with this. Slavery, serfdom, colonialism. We've tried all the approaches to forced labor, and they all have the same problem. People who are forced to work don't work as hard or as creatively as people who choose to work. Ambassador Santos leaned forward. Here's our proposal, Admiral. Instead of conquest, let's try cooperation. Humans provide innovation, creativity, and problem-solving. The Dominion provides technology, resources, and access to galactic civilization. We work together as partners. The Dominion's Council of Supremes would never accept partnership with a primitive species. Then maybe don't tell them we're primitive, Dr. Chen suggested. Tell them we're a recently discovered species with unusual problem-solving capabilities and a natural talent for managing complex systems. That would be technically accurate, Zektar admitted. Exactly. Ambassador Santos smiled. Diplomatic language is about presenting facts in their most favorable light. Dr. Tanaka activated yet another display. We've already prepared a preliminary proposal for technological and cultural exchange. Humans would share innovations in management theory, conflict resolution, and creative problem-solving. The Dominion would share advanced technology and serve as humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. We've also identified several specific areas where human expertise might benefit the Dominion immediately, Dr. Mitchell added. For instance, we understand you're having difficulties with a rebellious species in the Kepler 442 system? Zektar's eye stalks twitched in surprise. How do you know about that? You mentioned it during one of your communications. Dr. Chen explained. And we've been analyzing the situation. The species in question appears to be engaging in passive resistance and economic sabotage. Yes, they comply with direct orders, but somehow everything takes 3 times longer than it should, and their productivity has declined by 60% since conquest. Classic human-style rebellion. Ambassador Santos said with a slight smile. We invented malicious compliance. Malicious compliance? Doing exactly what you're told to do, but doing it in the most unhelpful way possible. Dr. Mitchell explained. It's very effective against authoritarian management. Tanaka nodded. But the solution isn't more force. The solution is better management. Give them some autonomy, some stake in the success of their work, and some recognition for their contributions. Impossible. They are conquered subjects. But they don't have to stay conquered subjects, Ambassador Santos pointed out. They could become partners, contributing members of the Dominion rather than resentful subordinates. Furthermore, Dr. Chen added, humans have extensive experience in transitioning from conflict to cooperation. We've developed entire fields of study around conflict resolution, post-conflict reconstruction, and building sustainable partnerships between former enemies. You're saying humans could help the Dominion manage its existing territories more effectively? We're saying humans could help the Dominion transition from an empire based on conquest to a confederation based on mutual benefit, Ambassador Santos said, which would be more sustainable, more productive, and probably more interesting.
Zektar floated in thoughtful silence for several minutes.
Around him, the human diplomats waited patiently, occasionally adjusting their positions in zero gravity with practiced ease. This is highly irregular, he finally said. The best solutions usually are, Dr. Mitchell observed. I would need to discuss this with the Council of Supremes. Of course, Ambassador Santos agreed. But while you're discussing it, perhaps we could arrange some small-scale cooperation. Nothing formal, just proof of concept. Such as? Doctor. Tanaka smiled. Well, we understand you're having some technical difficulties with your quantum disruptors overheating during extended use. Zektar stared at her. How could you possibly know that? Your ship's energy signature fluctuates in a pattern consistent with thermal management issues, Dr. Chen explained. And we've been studying the problem. Human engineers think we might have some solutions. You've been studying our most advanced weapons systems? We've been studying an interesting engineering challenge, Ambassador Santos corrected diplomatically, and we think we might be able to help. In exchange for nothing, Dr. Mitchell said. Consider it a gesture of goodwill, a demonstration of what human Dominion cooperation might look like. Zektar realized that somehow, without his noticing, the humans had turned a surrender negotiation into a job interview. And despite every instinct telling him this was impossible, he found himself genuinely curious about what they might propose. Admiral Zektar had made what he was beginning to suspect was a terrible mistake. He had agreed to allow a small team of human technical consultants aboard the subjugator of Defiance to examine the quantum disruptor overheating problem. What he had not anticipated was that humans approach technical problems the way they approached everything else, with enthusiastic curiosity, complete disregard for established procedures, and an apparently limitless capacity for asking questions no one had thought to ask before. So, This is your primary plasma conduit, Dr. Sichaba, Sarah Chen observed, floating gracefully through the engineering section while examining the massive energy transfer systems. It's beautiful, really. The crystalline matrix design is elegant. Thank you, Chief Engineer, Vorthak replied stiffly. The hulking Dominion engineer had been maintaining these systems for over 2 centuries and was not entirely pleased to have aliens examining his work. But I'm curious. Dr. Chen continued, pulling out a small scanning device. Why do you route all the plasma through a single primary conduit instead of using multiple parallel channels? Because that is how it is designed, Vorthak stated firmly. Right, but why is it designed that way? Vorthak's confusion was evident. Because that is how quantum disruptors work. Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with her colleague, Dr. Marcus Webb, a thermal dynamics engineer from MIT. Vorthak, who originally designed this system, the great engineer Kormathvel 12,000 years ago, his design is perfect and has never required modification. Huh. Dr. Webb said, studying his own readings. That's actually kind of the problem. Explain. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing the energy flow patterns she had been measuring. Your system is incredibly efficient at channeling massive amounts of energy through the primary conduit. But when you fire repeatedly, all that thermal energy has nowhere to dissipate except back through the same conduit. The cooling systems manage thermal dissipation.
Vorthak protested.
They do, Dr. Webb agreed. But they're fighting against the fundamental design. You're essentially trying to cool down a system that's designed to concentrate heat in a single location. The design is perfect. The design is elegant. Dr. Chen corrected diplomatically. But elegance and efficiency aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the most effective solution is the messy one. She activated another display. Look, on Earth we had a similar problem with our early computer processors. We kept trying to make them faster and more powerful, but they kept overheating. The solution wasn't better cooling, it was multiple processors working in parallel. You're suggesting we modify a system that has worked for 12 millennia? We're suggesting you optimize a system that could work even better, Dr. Webb said. What if, instead of one massive primary conduit, you had 3 smaller parallel conduits? Each one would carry less energy, generate less heat, and give you redundancy. Vorthak stared at the humans as if they had suggested replacing the ship's hull with paper. That would require completely redesigning the quantum disruptor array. Actually, no, Dr. Chen said, pulling up a new schematic. Your existing system is modular. We could retrofit parallel conduits into the existing framework without major structural changes. Impossible. Well, let's find out. Dr. Knocker, Webb said cheerfully. Do you have a fabrication facility where we could build a small-scale prototype? 2 hours later, Vorthak found himself in the ship's engineering bay, watching 2 humans cobble together what appeared to be a miniature version of his quantum disruptor using spare parts, jury-rig components, and what Dr. Chen cheerfully called aggressive improvisation. This is not how we do things, he protested as Dr. Webb reconfigured a plasma relay with a tool that looked suspiciously like a modified kitchen utensil. No, this is definitely not how you do things, Dr. Chen agreed, carefully calibrating a makeshift thermal sensor. But it might work anyway. Human engineering appears to be chaotic. Oh, absolutely, Dr. Webb confirmed. But chaos isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes you need to try weird approaches to find better solutions. Furthermore, Dr. Chen added while connecting what appeared to be 3 separate cooling units in parallel, your engineering is actually too perfect. Too perfect? You've spent 12,000 years perfecting a single approach, Dr. Webb explained, which means you've gotten really, really good at that one approach. But you've also stopped considering alternatives. The design is optimal. For the original parameters, sure, Dr. Chen said. But technology evolves. Maybe what was optimal 12,000 years ago isn't optimal anymore. Dr. Webb activated the prototype. For instance, your original designer probably didn't have access to the advanced materials we can see in your ship's newer components. But you're still using the old design principles instead of taking advantage of the new materials. The miniature quantum disruptor hummed to life. Unlike the deep, resonant throb of the ship's main weapons, this one produced a higher, more complex harmonic. Now, Dr. Chen said, let's see how it handles sustained fire. For the next 20 minutes, they pushed the prototype through a series of tests that would have caused the main disruptors to overheat catastrophically. The parallel conduit design not only maintained stable temperatures, but actually improved efficiency. This is... Vorthak stared at the readings. How is it more efficient? Because instead of fighting thermal buildup, we're managing it. Dr. Raff, Webb explained. Each conduit operates at lower peak temperatures, which means less energy wasted on heat generation. Plus, Dr. Salipis, Chen added, the parallel design gives you flexibility. You can fire all 3 conduits simultaneously for maximum power, or cycle between them for sustained fire, or use just one for low-power applications. Borthak was quiet for a long moment, studying the prototype. In 12,000 years, no one has suggested modifying the quantum disruptor design. Well, that's probably because no one wanted to challenge 12,000 years of tradition, Dr. Webb said. Humans don't really have that problem. We challenge tradition every Tuesday. But more importantly, Dr. Chen added, no one else has needed to solve this specific problem. Your other conquered species probably just accepted that overheating was a limitation of the technology. Humans don't really do accepting limitations, Dr. Webb observed. We tend to assume every problem has a solution, even if we haven't found it yet. Admiral Zegtar, who had been monitoring the engineering section's progress, finally approached the group. Chief Engineer Vorthak, report. Sir, the humans have improved our quantum disruptor design.
Improved? Dr.
Chen gestured to the prototype. We think we can increase your weapon's efficiency by about 30% while eliminating the overheating problem entirely. The retrofit would take maybe 2 weeks. Furthermore, Dr. Webb added, the same principles could be applied to your power generation systems, life support systems, and probably your hyperspace drive. You've analyzed our hyperspace drive? Just the theoretical principles, Dr. Chen said quickly. We're not trying to steal your technology. We're just naturally curious about how things work. And, Dr. Webb continued, we noticed some inefficiencies in the energy distribution patterns that could probably be optimized. Admiral Zegtar looked from the enthusiastic humans to his stunned chief engineer to the clearly superior prototype humming quietly on the workbench. In 3 days, you've improved technology that has remained unchanged for 12 millennia. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds impressive, Dr. Chen said modestly. But honestly, fresh perspective helps with any engineering challenge. We're sure your people could find ways to improve human technology just as easily. More importantly, Dr. Webb added, this is just the beginning. Imagine what we could accomplish if our species worked together on a regular basis. Vorthak, still staring at the prototype, spoke slowly. The implications are significant. If the parallel conduit principle works for quantum disruptors, it could revolutionize Dominion engineering across multiple systems. Exactly, Dr. Chen said enthusiastically. And I bet you have insights about energy management and material science that could help us solve problems we've been working on for decades. Admiral Zegtar found himself in an unprecedented situation. Not only had these humans solved a problem that had plagued Dominion warships for centuries, but they had done it casually, as a gesture of goodwill, while simultaneously offering to share the benefits with their potential conquerors. Dr.
Chen, he said slowly, what would humanity want in exchange for these improvements?
Honestly, we'd love to learn about your materials science, she replied immediately. And your power generation technology could revolutionize energy production on Earth.
Oh, and we have about 1,000 questions about how hyperspace navigation works. You want knowledge exchange. We want collaboration, Dr. Webb corrected. Knowledge exchange is just the beginning. Imagine what we could discover if human creativity and Dominion technology worked together on new problems. Quote, for instance, Dr. Chen added, we understand you've been having trouble with some of your client species engaging in passive resistance. Admiral Zegtar's eye stalks focused sharply. How do you know about that?
You mentioned it during our diplomatic meeting,
she replied. And it sounds like a management problem more than a military problem. Dr. Fitch, Chen used to run a research laboratory with 300 scientists from 12 different countries. Dr. Webb explained, she's got extensive experience managing brilliant people who don't necessarily want to follow orders. The key is making people feel like they're part of something important rather than just following instructions, Dr. Chen said. People work harder when they understand why their work matters and when they have some input into how it gets done. You're suggesting we should ask conquered species for their opinions.
We're suggesting you should ask partner species for their expertise, Dr. Webb corrected.
Big difference in framing. Admiral Zegtar realized that once again the humans had somehow turned a technical consultation into something much larger. They weren't just offering to fix his weapons, They were offering to fix his empire. And despite every instinct telling him this was impossible, the evidence was sitting right there on the workbench. A quantum disruptor that worked better than anything the Dominion had built in 12,000 years, designed by aliens who had learned about the technology 3 days ago. Dr. Chen, he said finally, how long would it take to retrofit our entire weapons array with this parallel conduit design? With your fabrication facilities? Maybe 2 weeks, she replied. But Admiral, that's just the beginning. If you're really interested in optimization, we should talk about your supply chain management, your administrative efficiency, and your conflict resolution protocols. One step at a time, Admiral Zector said, though he was beginning to suspect that with humans, one step had a way of becoming a complete journey before anyone realized what was happening. 3 weeks after the quantum disruptor retrofit, Admiral Zector found himself participating in what humans called a video conference with the Dominion Council of Supremes. The 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy floated in their individual command chambers across multiple star systems, their imposing forms displayed on the main view screen of the Subjugator of Defiance. What made this particular council session unprecedented was the presence of Dr. Scory. Sarah Chen, who was floating cheerfully beside the Admiral, apparently unfazed by being in the presence of entities that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Admiral Zector, Supreme Commander Vax then intoned with appropriate gravity, your reports regarding this Earth situation have been unusual.
Yes, Supreme Commander.
I have requested this emergency session to recommend a fundamental change in our approach to this species. The 12 Supremes exchanged glances through their communication links. Supreme Tactician Corvette spoke first. Your reports indicate that instead of conquering this planet, you have entered into some form of collaboration? That is correct. And the results have exceeded all expectations. Explain.
Admiral Zector gestured to Dr.
Chen, who activated a holographic display. The humans have improved our weapons efficiency by 32%, reduced our energy consumption by 18%, and solved 3 engineering problems that have plagued our fleet for centuries. In 3 weeks, Dr. Chen added helpfully. And honestly, we're just getting started. Supreme Economist Feltar leaned forward. You claim these improvements were accomplished by a species that has not yet achieved interstellar travel? That's correct, Doctor, Chen replied. Though we should point out that the lack of interstellar travel doesn't mean lack of innovation. We just haven't had access to the materials and energy sources that make faster-than-light travel practical. Furthermore, Admiral Zector continued, the humans have provided solutions to several administrative challenges we have been experiencing with our client species. Supreme Administrator Cathrell's interest was clearly piqued. What administrative challenges, Dr. Cathrell? Chen pulled up another display. Well, Admiral Zector mentioned you've been having productivity issues with several conquered worlds, so we analyzed the situation and developed some recommendations. You analyzed classified Dominion internal affairs? We analyzed management problems, Dr. Chen corrected cheerfully. Humans have been dealing with complex organizational challenges for centuries. We've gotten pretty good at identifying systemic issues and developing solutions. Supreme Tactician Corvette's voice carried a note of incredulity. You're suggesting that a primitive species can solve administrative problems that have challenged the Dominion for centuries? We're suggesting that fresh perspective and different approaches can provide solutions that might not be obvious from within the system. Doctor, Chen replied diplomatically, it's not about primitive versus advanced. It's about different experiences leading to different insights. Admiral Zector activated a new display. For example, the productivity crisis on Kepler 442b. Human analysis identified the root cause as what they term management-induced demoralization. Explain. Dr. Chen took over the presentation. The species on Kepler 442b are naturally collaborative and take pride in their work, but Dominion standard occupation procedures treat them as conquered subjects rather than valued contributors. So they respond by doing exactly what they're told to do, but doing it as slowly and unhelpfully as possible. Classic malicious compliance, she continued. The solution isn't more oversight or more punishment. The solution is giving them some autonomy and recognition for their contributions. Supreme Administrator Cathrell studied the data. You're suggesting we should treat conquered species as partners. We're suggesting you should treat productive species as assets to be developed, rather than resources to be extracted, Dr. Chen clarified. Happy, engaged workers are more productive than resentful, oppressed workers. Impossible. Conquered species cannot be trusted with autonomy. Actually, Admiral Zector interjected, we tested the human recommendations on a small scale. We gave the Kepler 442b population increased autonomy over their work processes and established recognition systems for exceptional performance. And productivity increased by 47% in 2 weeks. The council chamber fell silent. Supreme Economist Feltar was the first to speak. 47%? Furthermore, Dr. Chen added, the same principles could be applied to other Dominion territories. We've identified at least 12 worlds where similar approaches could yield significant productivity improvements. Supreme Commander Vaxthen's massive form shifted slightly. Human, you claim your species can improve the efficiency of an empire that has operated successfully for 12 millennia. We claim our species can offer different perspectives that might reveal optimization opportunities. Dr. Chen replied, every system can be improved. The question is whether you want to explore those improvements or maintain the status quo. Moreover, Admiral Zektar added, the humans have demonstrated these improvements are not theoretical. Our weapons are more efficient, our energy systems are more stable, and our administrative challenges are being resolved. Supreme Tactician Korveth leaned forward. What do the humans want in exchange for these improvements? Dr. Chen smiled. Partnership. Knowledge exchange. The opportunity to learn from you while sharing what we've learned. And access to galactic civilization for humanity. Admiral Zektar added. They want to be part of something larger rather than isolated on their single world. Supreme Philosopher Yendar, who had been silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. This is highly irregular. The Dominion does not form partnerships with primitive species. With respect, Dr. Chen said, calling us primitive while asking us to solve your problems sends mixed messages. Either we're primitive and our solutions shouldn't work, or we're capable problem solvers who might be valuable allies. Furthermore, Admiral Zektar added, the human approach to problems is unlike anything I have encountered. They assume every challenge has a solution and approach each problem with fresh perspective. Supreme Engineer Morketh activated a new display. I've been reviewing the quantum disruptor modifications. The parallel conduit design is elegant. Simple but elegant. Thank you, Dr. Chen replied. But that's just the beginning. If you're interested, we have ideas for improving your hyperspace efficiency, your resource distribution networks, and your communication systems. You've analyzed our hyperspace technology? We've analyzed the theoretical principles and identified some potential optimization approaches, Dr. Chen said. Though we'd need to work with your engineers to test the practical applications. Supreme Commander Vaxthen was quiet for a long moment. Human, what you're describing sounds like integration rather than conquest.
Exactly, Dr.
Chen replied. Integration benefits everyone. Conquest only benefits the conqueror, and only in the short term. Explain. Dr. Chen pulled up a new presentation. Look, we humans have extensive experience with both approaches. Conquest-based empires eventually collapse because they spend all their resources maintaining control instead of developing their territories. Partnership-based alliances grow stronger over time because everyone benefits from cooperation. The British Empire conquered half the world and eventually lost it all, she continued. But the European Union, which is based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit, has been growing stronger for decades. Supreme Economist Feltar studied the economic projections Dr. Chen was displaying. These models suggest that partnership-based expansion could be more profitable than conquest-based expansion. In the long term, absolutely. You get higher productivity, low administrative overhead, and voluntary cooperation instead of forced compliance. Admiral Zektar activated another display. Furthermore, the humans have offered to help us transition existing territories from occupation-based administration to partnership-based cooperation. Meaning? Meaning we could apply these principles to worlds that are already experiencing productivity and compliance problems, Dr. Chen explained. Give them more autonomy, recognize their contributions, and treat them as valuable members of the Dominion rather than conquered subjects.
Supreme Administrator Kethril looked intrigued despite himself.
And you believe this would improve efficiency across multiple territories? We believe it would improve efficiency, reduce administrative overhead, and eliminate most of your resistance problems, Dr. Chen replied. Happy partners don't rebel. They cooperate. Supreme Tactician Korveth was studying the military implications. What about security? How do we maintain control if we're not maintaining military occupation? You don't maintain control, Dr. Chen said. You maintain cooperation. Much more effective and much less expensive. But what prevents rebellion? The fact that rebellion would make their own lives worse rather than better, she explained. If people benefit from the relationship, they want to maintain the relationship, Admiral Zector added. The humans have also provided recommendations for transitioning from military occupation to civilian administration on multiple worlds. Supreme Commander Vaxton was quiet for several minutes, studying the displays and data projections. Finally, he spoke. This council will deliberate on these recommendations. Admiral Zector, you will remain in the Sol system and continue collaborating with the humans until we reach a decision. Yes, Supreme Commander. Human, Vax then continued, addressing Dr. Chen directly. If the Council approves this partnership approach, would your species be willing to assist with broader administrative reforms across Dominion territory? Dr. Chen grinned. Supreme Commander, humans love fixing things that don't work properly. It would be our pleasure. As the communication link closed, Admiral Zector turned to Dr. Qi. Chen, you realize you may have just convinced the most powerful military force in the galaxy to fundamentally change how they operate. Well, she replied cheerfully, when you put it like that, it sounds like we've had a productive morning. Admiral Zector was beginning to understand that humans had a remarkable talent for making the impossible sound like common sense. And despite everything he thought he knew about conquest, empire, and galactic politics, he was starting to suspect they might be right. 6 months after first contact, Admiral Zector stood in what had once been the bridge of the subjugator of Defiance and was now the coordination center for the most successful administrative reform in Dominion history. Around him, humans and Dominion personnel worked together at stations that bore little resemblance to the rigid military hierarchy he had commanded for centuries. Admiral, called Dr. Fear. Sarah Chen from across the bridge, where she was reviewing efficiency reports with Supreme Administrator Kethrol via hologram, we're getting fantastic results from the Vega Prime transition. Productivity is up 63% since we switched to the collaborative management model. And the resistance movements? Admiral Zector asked. What resistance movements? Dr. Zector. Chen replied with a grin. When you give people a stake in their own success, they stop wanting to rebel and start wanting to contribute. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his engineering console, where he was coordinating improvements to hyperspace efficiency across 17 Dominion fleets. Plus, it turns out that when you ask people how to solve problems instead of just ordering them around, they come up with amazing solutions. Admiral Zector reviewed the data streaming across his command displays. In 6 months, the Dominion had transitioned from a conquest-based empire to what humans called a galactic cooperative partnership. The results were unprecedented. Productivity up across all territories. Administrative costs down by 40%, and not a single rebellion or resistance movement anywhere in Dominion space. Sir, reported Lieutenant Vixon, who was now the liaison coordinator between Dominion forces and the growing network of human advisors. We're receiving another request for partnership transition assistance. The Andromeda Collective wants to join the cooperative. The Andromeda Collective? Admiral Zector's eye stalks widened. They've been our primary rivals for 3 centuries. Not anymore, Dr. Darkhard, Chen said cheerfully. Turns out they've been watching what we've been doing, and they want in on the partnership model. They want to be conquered? They want to be partners, Dr. Webb corrected. Big difference. Ambassador Maria Santos, who had become the chief diplomatic liaison between Earth and the Dominion Council, approached the Admiral's station. Admiral, we've got the preliminary reports from the Rigel system transition. It's even better than we expected. Better how? Well, remember how the Rigelians were our biggest productivity problem? Constantly behind schedule, constant quality issues, constant complaints from the local administrators. Yes, we were considering increased military oversight. Turns out the problem wasn't the Rigelians, Ambassador Santos explained. The problem was that we were asking them to do work that didn't match their natural abilities. They're incredible at complex systems design, but terrible at repetitive manufacturing. Dr. Chen pulled up the Rigel system data. So we switched their assignments. Now they're designing next-generation technology for the entire Dominion, while the manufacturing is handled by species that actually enjoy precision manufacturing work. The result, Dr. Webb added, is that Rigelian design innovations have improved our technology by 20% across multiple systems, and manufacturing quality is up because it's being done by people who are naturally good at manufacturing. Admiral Zector studied the reports. You're saying we've been using species inefficiently for centuries? You've been using species according to conquest priorities rather than optimization priorities. Ambassador Santos explained diplomatically. When you conquer someone, you assign them whatever work needs doing. When you partner with someone, you figure out what they're naturally good at and find ways to use those abilities. It's like Dr. Chen searched for an analogy. Imagine if you tried to use your quantum disruptors as communication arrays. They'd work, technically, but they wouldn't work well because that's not what they're designed for. Same principle applies to civilizations, Dr. Pig, Webb continued. Every species has natural strengths. The trick is figuring out how to coordinate those strengths instead of just imposing uniform requirements. Lieutenant Vexan was monitoring communication channels. Admiral, we're also receiving requests for technical assistance from 16 different systems. Apparently word is spreading about our efficiency improvements. Technical assistance requests? Other stellar civilizations want to learn about the partnership model, Ambassador Santos explained. They're offering to share technology and resources in exchange for help transitioning their own administrative systems. Admiral Zektar looked around his transformed bridge. Where once there had been a rigid command hierarchy focused on military control, there was now a dynamic collaboration center where beings from dozens of different species worked together on solving problems he hadn't even known existed 6 months ago. Dr. Chen, he said slowly, when you first suggested partnership instead of conquest, did you anticipate this level of transformation? Honestly? No, she replied with characteristic human honesty. We thought we might help improve efficiency on a few worlds. We didn't expect to accidentally trigger a galactic administrative revolution. Though, Dr. Webb added, it makes sense in retrospect. When you create a better system, other people notice and want to adopt it too. Dr. Yuki Tanaka approached the group, floating gracefully through the zero-gravity coordination center that the bridge had become. Admiral, we're getting some interesting proposals from the Outer Rim territories, such as several independent systems want to join the Dominion Cooperative, but they want to contribute specialized services rather than traditional resources. Explain. Dr. Tanaka activated a holographic display. For example, the Tau Ceti system has incredible artists and cultural specialists. They're offering to develop entertainment and cultural programming for the entire Dominion in exchange for partnership and access to advanced technology. Entertainment programming, cultural exchange, educational content, artistic collaboration, Ambassador Santos explained. Things that make life more interesting and help different species understand each other better. Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. Plus, it turns out that when people are happy and engaged, they're much more productive and creative. Entertainment isn't just luxury, it's infrastructure. Furthermore, Dr. Webb added, the cultural exchange programs are solving communication and cooperation problems between species that we didn't even realize existed. Admiral Zektar was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. You're saying that the Dominion is becoming more powerful by becoming less controlling? Exactly, Dr. Chen replied.
Turns out that voluntary cooperation is much more efficient than forced compliance. Lieutenant Vexan interrupted with an urgent tone.
Admiral, we're receiving a priority communication from the Council of Supremes. The main view screen activated, showing the 12 Supremes in their council chamber.
But something was different about this session. Instead of the formal imposing arrangement Zektar remembered, the Supremes appeared to be in active discussion with various advisors and technical specialists.
Admiral Zektar, Supreme Commander Vax then began, the Council has reviewed the 6-month performance reports from the partnership transition.
Yes, Supreme Commander. The results are
unprecedented. Economic growth is at levels we have not seen in 3 millennia. Administrative efficiency has improved beyond our most optimistic projections. And we have received formal partnership requests from 47 independent stellar civilizations. Dr. Chen tried to suppress a pleased smile. That's wonderful news, Supreme Commander. Furthermore, Supreme Economist Feltar added, our long-term economic projections indicate that the partnership model is sustainable indefinitely, whereas the conquest model would have led to economic collapse within 2 centuries. Which brings us to why we have called this session. Supreme Administrator Catherall announced. The Council unanimously votes to formally adopt the partnership model as the standard approach for all future Dominion expansion and administration. Moreover, Supreme Commander Vax then continued. We would like to offer humanity full membership in what we are now calling the Galactic Cooperative Partnership, with Earth serving as the administrative coordination center for partnership transitions. Admiral Zektar looked at Dr. Chen, who was clearly trying to maintain diplomatic composure despite her obvious excitement. Supreme Commander, she said carefully, humanity would be honored to accept partnership membership. but I think we should clarify expectations about the administrative coordination role.
Clarify how? Well, humans are really good at solving problems and improving systems, but we're not particularly good at following rigid administrative procedures, she explained with characteristic honesty. If you want us to coordinate partnership transitions, you'll need to accept that we'll probably do it in typically chaotic human fashion.
Supreme philosopher Yendar, who had initially been the most skeptical of the human approach, actually made a sound that the translation matrix identified as laughter. Dr. Chen, after 6 months of watching human chaotic fashion produce better results than 12 millennia of rigid procedures, I believe the Council is prepared to embrace chaos.
In that case, Dr. Thomas,
Chen replied with a wide grin. I think this partnership is going to work out very well. As the communication link closed, Admiral Zektar turned to survey his transformed command center. Humans, Dominion personnel, and representatives from a dozen other species worked together in organized pandemonium, coordinating the most successful expansion in galactic history.
Dr. Chen, he said finally,
when you first interrupted my conquest announcement to ask about quantum mechanics, did you have any idea this would happen? Are you kidding? She replied, laughing. We thought we were just making first contact with aliens. We had no idea we were going to accidentally optimize an entire galactic civilization. Though, Dr. Versus,
Webb added thoughtfully, it does make sense. Humans are naturally curious, naturally collaborative, and naturally inclined to fix things that don't work properly.
Put us in contact with a 12,000-year-old empire that had some efficiency problems, and of course we'd want to help solve them. Admiral Zekthar realized that he had learned something important about humanity. They didn't just solve problems. They transformed the contexts that created those problems in the first place. They hadn't defeated the Dominion or outsmarted the Dominion or overpowered the Dominion. Instead, they had convinced the Dominion to become something better than it had been. And in the process, they had accidentally created the most successful interstellar civilization in galactic history. Dr. Chen, he said, what's humanity's next project? Well, she replied with the same enthusiasm she had shown 6 months ago when discussing quantum mechanics. We've been thinking about intergalactic communication. There are probably other galaxies out there with interesting civilizations, and it might be fun to see if we can establish contact.
Admiral Zektar looked at Dr.
Webb, who nodded cheerfully. Should be an interesting engineering challenge. Admiral Zektar realized that serving alongside humans meant that life would never be boring again. Challenging, chaotic, and occasionally incomprehensible, but never boring. Somehow, he was looking forward to it.